And let's get one other thing straight. How many other cameras can capture in RAW at that price point? And that's where this whole idea of what an opportunity to jump into a Canon cinema camera if you don't already own one, or if you are a Canon R5C owner, you understand the battery struggles, right? You understand the potential rigging necessity if you're going to do a all-day production. Well, a Canon or a camera like the Canon C200 literally removes your battery worries. It also reduces the cost of media because unless you're shooting RAW, you can actually just use SD cards. And the files are flexible enough for you to make adjustments without breaking the files. And they look good, and they have Canon color science or the Canon color look, which makes it easy for you to distribute to any kind of streaming or social media. And if ever you needed even more flexibility, so let's say you were trying to match the C200 to a Red or some other camera brand or a completely different Canon that also can capture in RAW, you have that capability. And that 12-bit RAW, which by the way, you don't have to do 12-bit RAW, you could do 10-bit RAW on the C200. Both of those give you an incredible amount of flexibility. What you have to remember is to expose like you're trying to capture for C-Log3, because that is what the camera is optimized for. And when you do that, and if you're following my channel and you've seen the last few videos, when you're exposing for C-Log3, you don't have to worry about the super whites. So this whole idea of the highlight clipping thing very quickly dissolves because it's the roll-off is there that you need to reach that 100 IRE mark. So all of a sudden, at this incredible price point, you have a camera that is purpose-built from Canon's own mouth, right, for live events and live streaming. And consider where we are in the market and how much of both of those things we already shoot, whether it be an event like a conference and, somebody needed multicam coverage of that conference, or I've even done like rodeos before or shooting competitions where they wanted to stream it. The C200 can do this. I've done scientific conferences where the C200 ran nonstop for about 5 days. And it just powers through. The Ethernet port allows you to control it remotely. It's just kind of awesome. If you're doing E&G, so you're out in the field and you're gathering information and you need to quickly upload it so that it can go on social media or some newsfeed or somebody's website or something like that, this camera over-delivers for those types of things. It's all that intermediate stuff that it doesn't do exceptionally well unless you're willing on having a RAW workflow. So if you're shooting, say, television commercials, you probably shouldn't capture an Xfabc. Yes, you have the flexibility, but why would you risk it? Just go RAW. And I want to say one other thing before I start reading the comments here. But do you all remember when Blackmagic launched their Pocket Cinema camera? And the shape of it is really awkward. It's difficult to use on a gimbal. It's difficult to rig. You have to power it via a V-mount. It's got mini XLRs. the list goes on, right? The back screen is not calibrated properly. You have to like recalibrate it. It's just like one thing after another. And no matter what complaint anyone ever had about the Blackmagic, including me, and I bought 3 of them, it was always like, but at that price though, at that price, do I have anything to complain about? And I think the new at that price though camera that literally, again, is purpose built for content creators, modern content creators at that. If you're a wedding shooter, this camera can do it. If you do live streams, this camera can do it. If you do live broadcast of any type, of whether it be events or funerals or rodeos, like I said, or sports, anything like that, this camera can do it. Autofocus, the camera can do it. Blackmagic can't say that. There's no such thing as autofocus on Blackmagic. It's kind of a joke that they even have it in the menu. If you need XLR audio with or without phantom power, this camera can do it. If you are using those, like the Rode, the little cheap Rode Wireless Go, I think it's called, or the Wireless Go 2, or any of the other brands, whether it be DJI or I don't even know. It feels like everybody and their mama makes some of these at this point. This camera allows you to take in microphones that way and gives you good quality audio. What doesn't this camera give you? It's got SDI out and HDMI out, full-size HDMI out. It doesn't have a dedicated time code in port. So consider that, right? For those of us that are doing multicam, it doesn't have that. But if you are an R5C owner, if you're an R5 owner, and you use your R5 or your R5C to do video, this camera, unless you're purposely trying to capture in 8K, this camera will do it better and more efficiently and save you money in the process. So I want to know what you guys think about the Canon C200. And by the way, if you've ever shot or if you've owned or if you've worked with the Canon C200, do me a favor, give the video a thumbs up so that I know. And also to help spread the word about this live stream to other people that might be interested. But let's start reading the comments here. Let's see. Logos 724, love your LUTs. Thank you. Really appreciate it, man. Thanks for the answer. Greetings from Ecuador. Always good to see you. Since Australia was crazy with C19 pandemic measures, did you dodge the bullet? I mean, provision Rex. So I was actually there before the pandemic. So I was in Australia before the pandemic and before the big Sydney fire. So I missed both of those events, and the fire was devastating. I couldn't even believe it. Full RAW, yes. Other Canon budget cams are compressed RAW. I shoot C70 and RAW is compressed. That's the only way they can fit in the V90 cards. So Kevin, you're right. Here's something that I find really interesting about Canon and Canon RAW. So the Canon RAW out of the R5 and the R5C is much easier to work with than the Canon RAW Lite out of the C200. And if I'm not mistaken, the compression ratio of the C200 is like 3-to-1. And just to put this into perspective for you, Red digital cinema cameras, the compression ratio, the lowest compression ratio that you could shoot on DSM-C2 is like 4-to-1. So the compression ratio is lower on the C200 when capturing in RAW 12-bit. That should say something, but it also means, and this is, of course, back when the camera came out, it put a lot more stress on the hardware. So if you didn't have a beefy computer, your computer might struggle, or your renders might take incredibly really long times. Fast forward to 2023, I don't care what I throw at my Mac Studio, it renders like butter. Nothing ever renders in real time, not even 8K 60p. It renders faster than real time. So I'm guessing that even that codec, that C200 Canon RAW Lite, is likely going to be handled better by modern computer systems. So I think that part of that problem is actually kind of goes away. So let's see here. Let's see. I use Carlos LUT on my C500 and it's just stunning. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate the support there. Can you comment on the C200 dynamic range? CineD just released their test on C200 showing 11.6 of usable DR, placing it just below the R6. Okay, Mr. Wolf. So here's, first off, I'm not going to bash on CineD's anything or anyone else who does these tests that are using software and a chart to handle or manage the data that they're reading. What I will say is that in practical use and in practical environments that I personally have participated in, that I shot with my camera, that I was the one doing the capturing, I know that I had at least 13 stops of usable dynamic range. And for my delivery platforms, which were either streaming or television, they were more than plenty. So if I am exposing my scene based on what content I need to make sure is captured, then I won't have a problem with the dynamic range out of that camera. And to be honest, I can do the same with the R5. I can do the same with the 5D Mark IV, I guess was the last one that I owned. And I have videos on my channel literally showing that. So consider that you don't allow the camera to make the decisions for you. You're just prepared, understanding the shot that you're about to capture, whether you need extra information in the shadows or whether you need extra information in the highlights. And if you're doing something like outdoor sports, I guarantee you, unless you're aiming it at the sun or a cloud is backlit and what you're trying to capture is underexposed by more than 3 stops, you will be able to balance out the shot and get quality images. In the pre-show, the very first clip after I did my little talking head thing with the vertical video, I captured that scene in Sydney on the C200 and I mastered that scene for HDR, for YouTube HDR, so that's HDR 1000. And I uploaded it and it is available to see it in HDR on YouTube. And if you look at that scene, we have everything from the sky, clouds, water, sunrise happening, the lamps on the street are on. There's detail inside of the bulbs of the lights. There's detail in the waves in the water. We can see the color of what people are wearing as they're walking in the background. So if you need more dynamic range than that, the best way to get it is to light your scene. That scene, that specific scene, I didn't light it. I used available light to get that scene. And that's sort of where my disagreement comes in with the idea of publishing results based on what my Xyla 21 is showing and what this piece of software is doing to give me a signal to noise ratio of -2. Like, sorry, but you give the best possible camera to someone who doesn't know how to use it, and they're going to screw up the image. You give an okay camera to someone who understands exposure, and they're going to blow you away with what they're able to capture. And that has been a theme of my channel from when I started the channel. So while I am, and I do like the whole nerdiness of the process, I'm more of a, what can I get with this specific tool, and understanding the breaking points in real practical examples for the type of work that I do, so that I can then sort out how to circumvent problems if there are problems, or how to overcome challenges when I'm faced with them and didn't expect them. And I think that that's really the takeaway with any camera, because I don't care what camera you have, if you don't pay attention to your exposure, some cameras might be a little less forgiving, but if you're going to put it in auto, then just buy a camcorder. And that's how I feel. And if anybody on my crew was going to complain to me about the dynamic range of the C200, I might, demote them to something other than a camera operator or first AC. And that's the truth. I'm just being transparent and honest here with you guys. So, but if anybody here has shot with the Canon C200 and you feel that you only got 11 and a half stops of dynamic range, and you want to explain yourself and you want to jump in, let me know in a comment, and I'd be happy to bring you on so you guys can tell your side of it. Okay, so let's see. I am lost where I'm supposed to be. So there are more comments that I missed, and that's what I'm doing. Maybe I should take a drink. And I should stop banging my Velcro thing down here. Okay, so let's see. Got that. Yes. Okay, here we go. So next comment. The lack of 10-bit Xfabc always steered me away from this camera. So yeah, that's the real weakness of the camera. There is no way around it. The only real option is to shoot RAW. Most of the projects that I shot on the C200 were RAW, unless I knew for a fact that the content was only going to live on social media. You guys have heard me talk about this a lot. RAW is overkill for social media. So it never bothered me to shoot Xfabc. If I was doing, and I shot multiple television campaigns, several of them being national campaigns on the Canon C200, and the RAW workflow was just, it was kind of beautiful. I mean, there is a lot of flexibility in those RAW files. There just is. Is there something that, I guess I'm not even sure what I would do. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. Like I'm thinking right now, for the past couple of years, I've personally exclusively shot on the Red Komodo. Only in RAW. I never shoot ProRes on Red Komodo. Before that, on the C500 Mark II, I again only shot in RAW. So maybe I'm the wrong person to judge whether this intermediate codec is of any value or not. But I do think, I do see the reasoning behind it. I know that people like nobody wants to buy a 50 terabyte drive to store footage if you don't have to, because that's pretty expensive, or 100 terabytes and so on. So I totally get it. Or a computer with a ginormous amount of storage so that you could work on any one project. I totally get it. The other thing that I don't ever do, and actually none of my crews do, is we don't press record and then just leave, right? So like we have takes, and when the take is done, you stop the recording, and we do that on every single project. So I'm not the right person that just plans on clicking record, shooting and shooting and shooting until I fill up the card, swap cards, and then keep doing it. That is not efficient, and I can't make any money if I did that. So none of my crews do that. And maybe that's one of the reasons why I don't worry about shooting in RAW. But if you are the type of person that is shooting an event and you're just, running and gunning and not really stopping your recording, then I can see why having that intermediate codec might be, a lot more beneficial. But for anything like YouTube, commercial related, corporate related, training related, there is no legitimate need to just keep going. And if you're doing live streaming, the majority of the live streams are only 1080. So Xfabc to the SD card is going to be more than enough and of higher quality than what actual streaming quality is. So I again think that the C200 has a kind of a sweet spot for a lot of different people. So let me move on in the comments here. Agree with the Canon raw light, much harder to work with than on my C70. So that's the thing, Alvin. I feel like the less compression, higher quality, but for whatever reason, the way that Canon does RAW, it's so different than the way Red does RAW that it relies a lot more heavily on the hardware resources on your computer. And that is, I guess, something to consider if you're not into it. The other thing you should consider is that the C200 is an EF mount camera. So that's going to make it more attainable for you to get both first-party and third-party lenses on the camera. But if you already have a bunch of RF lenses, you're not going to be able to use them. So I guess consider that. Let's see. I love the C200, but moved up to the C300 Mark II. The raw files were just massive. I've sold them and now use two C70s, B cams, and the R5C and cam animations. So yeah, totally agree. The upgrade to the C200 would be the C70, and the C300 Mark II. I still feel like the C70 kind of kicks its butt because they're both Super 35 cameras. C200 is also Super 35. I don't know. I feel like, see, what the C200 can do that the C300 can't is that high speed, right? So it can do 4K 60 where the C300 Mark II couldn't. And you can do higher frame rates if you're willing on going to HD, so 1080 on the C200. Again, if you're delivering to the web or streaming, 1080 is kind of like the delivery, so it's not horrible. But if you need a B cam for any one of these cameras that we're talking about, whether it be a C300 Mark III, a C500 Mark II, a C70, an R5C, an R5, C200 is kind of a no-brainer. It just kind of is. Or if you are setting up a studio shot where you're going to have a camera on sticks, this is one of the most affordable ways to get super high quality at not a heavy investment price. Of course, the fact that it doesn't have a screen means you will need an external monitor. And the fact that it doesn't have an EVF, if you're an EVF type shooter, you're going to need to sort that out. But for live events and live streaming and E&G work, this camera kind of kicks ass. And the fact that you could also bring it onto a commercial set and capture in 12-bit RAW is a gigantic bonus, because that means you pick one of these up, you don't have to rent a camera. Consider, just do that for yourself one time. Go to your favorite place, whether it be Borrow Lenses or Lens Pro to Go or whatever, and then see how much it would cost you to rent for a week, 1 week, another one of the cameras that you already own. And then subtract that amount from the price of the C200B, and all of a sudden you're like, maybe I should just buy one, because this means I don't ever have to rent again. That's kind of like the value proposition. I kind of think that's amazing. Great to hear you speak about real-world tests. It's the only way to go. Hire a cam before you purchase and test yourself. Totally agree, Kevin. The best way to determine whether a camera is right for you or not is to test drive it. Because watching YouTube videos and listening to people just spit out specs that you could read on B&H, it's going to get you hyped up, and it also helps you. This actually used to happen when I was single and in dating. I'm not a big talker, right? And I'm a guy. And, women like to talk a lot more than I do. And I remember dating different women, throughout my life before I met my lovely wife, Bert. And I could just say, one or two words, and they would kind of just fill in the story for me. They would just sort of fill in the reality of whatever it is that was happening. How was your day? Oh, I met with a new client, and it looked like it went pretty well. Oh, that's awesome. So are you going to be then traveling to XYZ, and then are you doing this? And is this going to be a commercial for, national, or is it going to be local? And if it is national, can I tag along, and blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking, shit, I just told you I met with a new client. I didn't say anything about it being a national commercial or a national campaign or traveling or invited you to travel with me. But I would sit there because I was dating whoever was on the other end of the conversation, and they just sort of filled in the story. And I feel like that's what happens when I've done it too, fixate on just watching a bunch of YouTube videos where somebody's spitting out specs, and then we begin to fabricate how it is that those specs might fit into what it is that I'm doing now or want to be doing in the future, rather than understanding whether that is something that works for me or not. Good example, and why it is that I ended up with 3 Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6Ks was that. I was like, well, shit. If this camera can do all these things, and it can shoot in B-RAW, and it can shoot in ProRes, then that's going to be perfect for my multicam studio that I've set up. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and blah, 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 blah. Next thing you know, I got it all set up. And because of the quality control issues with Blackmagic, white balance doesn't match across all the cameras, even if I'm using identical lenses on all the cameras with the same type of coatings that are optically matched. And there was no fix for it other than to manipulate the image, the raw image at that, in post, and then re-render files, which is the reason why I kicked them all out. And I have a video about all of that on my channel in case you guys are interested in watching it. But all of that fabrication of how this was going to save me so many thousands of dollars, because now I could just buy 3 of these very inexpensive cameras and XYZ my way into saving cash, was all fabricated by me consuming content and not test driving before I dove headfirst. That's a true story. So, sorry, I went off there on a on a tangent. I don't think I've ever told Bert about that story. where I would just listen to people fill in the gaps of whatever I didn't say in a story when I was dating them. I'm sure when she watches this, she's going to be like, so tell me more about this. It's not going to happen. Mr. Wolf, cool. You agree? Agreeing with Kevin. That's awesome. What do you think about C200 low light? Do you think it still holds in 2023? Did you guys see that clip that I shot at the max ISO on the C200? That's kind of mind-blowing. In the pre-show where I showed the, you know what, I'm just going to show it right now because I think that was one of those things that just kind of blew me away because I had never, ever, ever thought about going higher than 3200 ISO on any camera in my life ever. But that time I went all the way to the max, and then I figured, let's see what happens, and let's look at the results. I'll be right back here. This is Canon C200 RAW at ISO 25,600. There we go. Let me pause it. So this is way after sunset in Australia, Sydney, Australia. ISO 25,600. And if you would see this in 4K on my Pro XDR display, you would see very clear detail of windows in the homes and hotels in the deep background of this image. You would see a lack of noise or issues in the stone columns that straddle the bridge's entrance. I can't tell you how happy I was that I took a risk and shot that scene. I also shot it at ISO 800, and I crushed a lot of information that I was not really able to recover. Did I get noise in the clip? I absolutely did. Did I have to denoise? Yes, I did. But that was still the quality that I was able to get out of that, astronomical ISO. And I hate to break it to you, but even cameras that are known for their low light capabilities, like the Sony A7S, A7S II, do they have an A7S III at this point? I forget. They all have noise issues. Can they go to the stratosphere in terms of ISO? The answer is yes. Can they do it with a clean image? And the answer is not really. So what do I think about the noise? I think that the noise is manageable. I think that if you understand the scene that you're trying to capture, and let's say that there was information in the shadows that you absolutely needed, you expose for that. And when you do, you're in good shape. And if you're the type of person that shoots with zero artificial light, as in you don't light for any of your scenes, then you learn how to work around the problems. But if you look at, say, the scene that I'm in now, where I'm wearing a hat, very dark, gradient, and then the rest of my face is lit up, if this was a C200 capturing it, this would not be an issue. There won't, it wouldn't be an issue because I have the right exposure set in camera. If I screw up the exposure, then yes, I could end up with an issue. And typically the way that works, in case you care, and this is something that Rubidium has talked about on several of his videos, is he literally just overexposes by a stop and a half. And then he brings that back down in post, and he has to do zero denoising. So that could be a strategy, and a strategy that could potentially work. Let's see. Loud and clear. I just bought a pair of them. Use your link below. I hope you get a cut. Darn you for pushing me over the edge of this, though. I've been eyeballing it for days. Yeah, so Brian, loud and clear, and I have been in conversations about this, as he said, for a few days. And for some of his use cases, I mean, you can't really beat the price. That's the thing. Like, the camera is incredibly capable. And at that price point, it becomes a super no-brainer. The fact that it costs less than mirrorless cameras, and no, it cannot do stills, right? So if you're a hybrid shooter, you're going to need a stills camera. But if you need video, if you need a video dedicated camera, whether it be for in-studio, on location, because it's easy to travel with, or you're doing live production of any type, or live event coverage of any type, these cameras are kind of no-brainers because everything you need is built in. And these, they're built in 2, 4, 6 stops, done. XLR audio with phantom power, 2 channels, done. You want to use cheap lavaliers? This allows you to use the Rode Video Mic Go's, or whatever those things are called, or the DJI system, or any of the others. You don't want large files? Xfabc gives you enough flexibility to deliver to anything streaming or the web. You want to go out on a commercial shoot and, throw in or capture at 12-bit raw light, ton of flexibility. It's there for you. One thing I wish the camera had that it doesn't is false color, but in this case, because you're going to need a monitor anyway, which monitor on the market these days doesn't have built-in false color? So who cares? You see, all of a sudden the obstacles begin to go away. And then when you look at the price itself, you're like, this is kind of a no-brainer. EF mount. That is probably the biggest deciding factor, or should be the biggest deciding factor for people considering this as a B cam. Because if you don't have EF mount lenses, you're going to have to go down that rabbit hole and invest. But if you do already, you're in good shape. And if you're trying to match other Canon cameras, this camera and the codecs that it does offer give you enough of that flexibility to allow you to match to other Canon cameras. So, Brian, thank you for using the link. I really appreciate it. And obviously, if you need any help with the cameras as you begin to work with them or whatever, let me know, and I'll send you my C200 Pro LUT Pack, which a lot of people really did like and enjoyed. So hopefully that helps. Truth about autofocus, keep it real. So the fact that this camera has dual pixel autofocus and it tracks and it is sticky and it does offer face only, again, gives you something that a lot of other cameras don't give you. For me, if I was doing a conference, I relied on autofocus, never had to worry about it. If I was doing a commercial shoot, I still, to this day, primarily shoot on Canon CNE primes, which are not autofocus enabled, but the little tool that Canon give us to, boost our confidence that what we want is in focus does work. So that's great. One of the reasons why I sold my compact Cine Zooms from Canon is because they only had Super 35 coverage. Well, when I bought my compact Cine Zooms, they were $26,000 each. And when I sold them for about $13,500 each. Well, you can now get them for about $6,000. They're parfocal, they're incredibly accurate, and their coatings match the entire CNE range. They're T2.8, so they're not going to give you that T2 that you would want if you're doing a shot or anything, like a shot like this, for example. But I'll tell you one other thing that has changed in the way that I shoot. If a shot is a medium or wide, then yes, I like to shoot at T2 to focus the attention on what I want. But if it's a close-up, I like to shoot at T4 or F4 if I'm using stills glass, because that makes sure that ear to ear and the tip of my nose, it's all in focus. And that's something that I probably started doing about 6 years ago. So yeah, the truth about autofocus is that autofocus comes in really handy if you don't have a crew. And if you're doing it by yourself, you probably should be relying on autofocus because the camera's going to do a better job than you if you're also then the audio engineer worried about composition and then worried about something staying in focus, especially on moving subjects. So there, I guess that's as real as I can get. What cameras do you think will be impacted by the sales drop? Blackmagic, Sony, Panasonic. Honestly, I think that anyone who would choose a mirrorless option that had a primary focus on video, so like the FX3 people or the Sony A7S III people or the R5C people or Nikon or Blackmagic, I think if enough of this word gets out to them, they should really give the C200 a hard look because it is a video camera. It is a cinema camera. It has the features and the flexibility of a true cinema camera. There is no need to add a mount that gives you XLR audio with phantom power. There is no need to worry about your 20 or 30 or 45 minutes of record time on the mirrorless batteries. These cameras are made to become and be workhorses. They're made to run hours on end, day after day after day, and be reliable. That's why they have built-in NDs. They're made for whatever environment you might need to put them in, and they're made to perform. They're not worried about IBIS because you're not doing stills. IBIS in video cameras is not always a welcomed addition, and it never has been for me. So I think that every brand is going to get affected, and maybe what this will do is it'll make Blackmagic drop their pocket cinema cameras to like $459 each, and at that point, that camera then becomes competitive again for those people that are starting out. But in the past, I've always said the Blackmagic pocket cinema cameras are probably the best cameras to learn cinematography on. And now I'm going to say this camera, the C200B, is probably the best to learn filmmaking and cinematography on for reasons that are not obvious to, say, the Pocket 6K. It's got a marker that tells you exactly what the sensor plane is so you can learn how to do manual focus. It has RAW so you can learn how to develop RAW. And as you learn and level up your skills, this camera can continue to be part of your arsenal and tool set. That is the best part about the C200. The Pocket 6K, it's a good entry-level camera that you will outgrow because you will get frustrated with things like rigging, V-mounts, mini XLRs, and so on and so forth. Whereas with this camera, once you level up a skill, this camera can still pull its weight. And I think that that's the main reason why a lot of different camera manufacturers are going to get affected by it. Let's see. Chaco, thanks for stopping by, man. I think there were to Mitch C200 in stock. What does Mitch mean? I don't know what that means. You mean there were too many? There were too many C200s in stock? Possibly. I actually think, and this happens every January at B&H, right? Whatever is in their surplus and they know is being replaced, even if it's 6 or 9 months later, B&H doesn't want to sit on inventory before a new product is announced. And I think that this is one of the reasons why they work out a deal with Canon and say, we got to figure out how to move inventory. And Canon's like, yeah, man, go for it, blow them out. I think that's where we're at. A massive problem was the RAW file. So again, even back when I was shooting on the C200, my computer, it could handle the RAW files, but the renders just took forever because of the amount of resources that Canon RAW Lite demands from your system. I'm not sure where we're at now because, again, I don't have any issues even with 8K at this point or 8K 60 at this point on my system. So I'm not sure whether that would translate today or not. I'll shoot YouTube content in 8-bit all day. Absolutely. Overkill. Dialing your exposure and colors in camera and 8-bit matters 0. Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Hey, Kevin Evans, since you had both cameras, how do the C300 Mark II and C200 compare in terms of autofocus? So the C200 Mark II, I'm going to tell you, Mr. Wolf, from my experience, the C200 Mark II, I'm sorry, the C200, because it was newer, I felt did a better job in autofocus than the C300 Mark II. With that said, there is so much fine tuning that you can do on these cinema cameras from Canon to force autofocus to behave the way you want it to, that I don't think it matters. I think it becomes your personal preference on adjustments. But I'd be curious to see what anybody else has to say about that. Okay. There are big YouTube channels using C200, Curtis Judd, CVP, just recently when they went to R5C. Absolutely. Like, there is no legit delivery platform on the planet today that would be hard-pressed to accept files from the C200. There just isn't. Unless you screwed up the exposure and you're learning or don't know what you're doing. I watched the 25600 video. I wonder if all that ISO you could achieve correct exposure or if it still was underexposing a few stops. So my meter, my on-camera meter, because that's the only thing I had to gauge, showed that I was one stop underexposed on that video. I'm asking because my C100 Mark II, it's okay to crank up ISO as long as I get the correct exposure, but it looks terrible if you underexpose and push it. Absolutely. If you underexpose a Canon camera on purpose, you're not going to be happy. If you underexpose the C200 in RAW and even Xfabc, expect to have to deal with noise. And denoising will always soften your image, regardless of whether you're shooting on Otis primes or Canon C&E primes or ARRI. No, well, I guess you can't because they are, the ARRI master primes are PL mount. And there's no way to adapt PL to Canon EF. But yeah, so I guess that's where we're at. Max. Always good to see you, man. I left C-Log to non-log neutral. Thank God I don't go above ISO 3200 because that's what my eyes can see. So that's another good point, right? And that goes back to the whole idea of understanding the scene that you're trying to expose for. If in fact you're capturing the information that you need to tell your story or progress your story, the C200 has more than enough dynamic range to allow you to do that in a very clean way. Well, I guess you answered my question. Cool. I had a project. Good to see you, man. And thanks for that early comment. Really appreciate it. But technology for autofocus has dated. Everything else is fine. As Carlos says, EF mount is on out. And it is. RF is new. Yep. EF lenses are a good price point for secondhand. Yeah. And for everyone who complained about how RF lenses are not open to third parties, there are lots of companies, including Zeiss, that make EF mount lenses. So there you go. Get even cheaper lenses than the L lenses. The L lenses are phenomenal, in my opinion. They do a very good job, very clean images out of them, as long as you take care of them and you haven't rubbed off all of the coatings and stuff. And they're weather sealed. And they communicate with the camera. So like there are so many reasons why you should go with the red ring EF lenses versus third party that, you know, it just, like my Otis lenses, as much as I love them, they're not autofocus. Focus assist kind of works on them, but they're not as easy to use as my EF lenses. So there you go. Let's see. I had projects. So tempted to strap the C200B on the Ronin and call it done. And that's the thing, right? Like at that price, if you need good quality, it can give it to you. If you need exceptional 12-bit raw quality, it can give it to you. And if it's going to live, and I edit projects, this is something I do, right? Like I have a camera, like the one that I'm using now, that literally lives where it is. I have a camera that literally lives on a jib. I have a camera that literally lives on a drone, and so on. So at this price point, it makes it really easy for you to build out your arsenal with tools that then save you time over time, allowing you to make more money in less time. So yeah, it's totally tempting, of course. Looking at the body only and ignoring the fact you aren't a heavy gimbal user, Komodo or Canon C200B. So on a gimbal, autofocus matters. So I'd have to give it to the C200B. Unless you have a remote follow focus puller person. And if you're working with the crew, damn, that's still tough. Because I think I would still prefer the flexibility of the C200B because it has a built-in ND system. So one less thing to worry about. And it has built-in XLR audio with phantom power, 2 channels. So again, something else that I don't have to rig on my Komodo or rig in addition to my camera. So yeah, the C200, I think it's kind of hard to beat. RF new system, got it, Kevin. Thanks for that. The price drop of the C200 will be very attractive to film schools as they start to Cinecam. And, you know, to your point, Com Channel, the fact that the C200 is able to help you get your career off, but can follow you when your career has matured, I think that that's the real selling point for a camera like the C200 and C200B. I think that that really is what makes the biggest difference. Where I can't say that about Blackmagic cameras, and I can't say that about mirrorless, right? Like, sure, it's true that I could use an FX3 to shoot whatever I would shoot on the Canon C200, but if I'm stepping into a commercial set, as hopefully everyone's career evolves and they start taking on larger and larger projects, I've yet to see mirrorless cameras be the A cam on a commercial set. I've seen them do BTS, and I've seen them do, you know, C cam or pickup shots, but I've never seen them be the A cam on a commercial set. So consider that. Let's see. Corey, thanks for stopping by, man. Bought my C200 in 2017, still using it today. Exactly. That's the thing. It's like it never ends. And it is a workhorse, and I'm struggling to give it up. And, you know, honestly, if you've been shooting with this since 2017, and here we are, 2023, Do you need to give it up? Because clearly it's allowed you to make a living. So I guess I'll leave that at that. Because technology, as much as it has changed, the delivery platforms, this camera can over-deliver to all the delivery platforms available today on the planet. Another thing to remember with C200, it has SDI out, which is fantastic, and that's absolutely true. It does not, however, have a port for timecode. So for multicam shoots, just remember that. SDI with 2K out while recording internally, also good. So if you want to record to an external recorder, you can definitely do that. Changing batteries, ND filters, 30-minute limit. You can only appreciate it when you miss the shot and the family wants to kill you. So ND filters are underrated. And even camera systems or camera companies like Red Digital Cinema, they are developing their own mounts that have ND filters in them for the next generation because they now understand that the market really needs them. And when the camera company, in this case Canon, made the ND solution for its own camera, in the image processing pipeline, the correct compensation is happening to make sure that you don't get any weird color shifts. And because it's not a variable ND, you also won't get that weird star thing effect that happens in highlights when you apply or you max out the ND. So there's lots of reasons why built-in NDs are a really good option. Let's see, Mr. Wolf. Which external recorder would you recommend for the C200B? The external recorder of my choice is the one that I have on the camera back there. That's a Komodo, and it is the Blackmagic Video Assist 4K 7-inch version. And the reason why I like that recorder better than Atomos is because I've never had drop frame artifacts show up in my footage that I captured on that external recorder. And it allows me to use inexpensive Samsung SSDs as my capture media, which makes it super easy to unplug the USB-C and plug it into my computer, and I'm off to the races. So those are the main reasons. The fact that it can also do and cross-convert HDMI to SDI is an additional bonus. Yeah, so, and it does ProRes in any flavor that you would want. Hey, Alvin, if anything, you'll be thanking me later for talking you off the edge. But I think if anyone has a C200 right now, they should really consider why would they get rid of it? Because there is no practical reason to get rid of it. Hybrid just isn't true. That's so true. When you do this stuff long enough, you've been shooting stills and stills cameras and video cameras. Yep, both things make your life way easier. And that's a fact. If you don't ever have to think about what the differences are in a single camera body, unless the only thing you do is travel videos, right? If you can only travel with one camera and you need that camera to do both things because you are creating content for YouTube and that's how you make a living, and you also want stills for, I was going to say Instagram, but Instagram doesn't even care about stills anymore. So you want stills for your own personal use, then maybe a one camera solution fits. But I'm with Brian on this. For stills, I have a stills dedicated camera. For personal passion work, I have a medium format camera. And for video, I have a variety of video cameras that only do video and do video really well. Ninja 5, I used to use the Ninja 5. Atomos is not, I'm not a fan. Atomos is too finicky for me. You know, that whole idea of showing you a little kangaroo when it drops a frame because you tapped the tripod or the gimbal or whatever it is that you are using to support your camera, that just doesn't work for me. The nickel and diming you to buy a very expensive accessory to allow you to do SDI, that doesn't really work for me. The lack of real usable tools, so like their whole idea of this whole turn on HDR mode so that you can see what your camera sensor is actually capturing, it's a gimmick. It's not worth using. And turning up the brightness all the way up while losing contrast doesn't really benefit me when I'm in the field. So there are lots of reasons why I'm not an Atomos fan. But for what they are, you know, a little plastic 5-inch monitor that has some good exposure tools, it's better than using the whatever's on the back of your camera or a smaller LCD screen. So there's that. I can't pronounce your name. Sorry. Why FX3 Netflix approved but C200 doesn't? Probably because Sony is a multimedia type company that has studios and allows their movies to be played on Netflix, which gives them much more and higher leveraging power than a company that doesn't have and isn't producing films. I don't know that to be true. That's speculation. But Sony has their hands into the consumer market, into the recording media, so like music videos and music artists arena. They do feature films. They have, you know, their cinema line of cameras, their Venice high-end and everything, all the way down to their consumer Sony Alpha line. And even if people don't want to admit it, the FX3 is a consumer camera because it still can't capture 4K DCI. So why? Because Sony has more leveraging power than other companies, in my opinion. And that could be totally wrong. All things film. Good point. 7-inch screen Blackmagic Assist sounds better. Wish I would have known. Like I really enjoy using the 7-inch video assist. It is heavier. It's also made out of metal. It is HDR capable and it is daylight viewable. So there are lots of reasons why I like it. 30% of Netflix films were not shot. That's true. So the thing about Netflix approved cameras is that not 100% of the film can be shot on this one camera is what they really are saying. Because there have been Disney movies and National Geographic movies that were shot on a lot of other types of cameras, and then the film is still available on Netflix. It's just what percentage of that film was shot on that camera or that scene was shot on that camera that Netflix is then, I guess, trying to regulate. It's probably quality control and something that they do. Without the Canon's official monitor, is there a way to control autofocus in the C200? I don't know that answer. If you don't already follow Rubidium, you probably should follow him and then send him that question via Instagram, because that's probably where he's going to be the most responsive. And I'm sure he will be happy to answer that. I don't know, because I always use the Canon official monitor when I had mine. So I don't know what that answer is. And I got through all the questions, and that's pretty awesome. So we've been at this for over an hour. I just want to thank everybody for participating and being a part of this awesome community that we're building. I hope that the information that we share brings value to all of you and to all the new people on the channel. If you haven't already subscribed, I want to invite you to subscribe because this really does help out the channel. And I really appreciate you all. So thanks for, again, taking the time to spend some time here with me today. We'll do this again next week. Tomorrow, I promise you, I will not be on here live. This will re-air tomorrow as a YouTube live replay. So it'll be higher quality than whatever the stream decided to do for me today. But I'll see you guys next week. Tomorrow, in case you guys missed yesterday's live stream, I have to go to a holiday party, and I'm going to make the best of it. So there we go. Thanks again for everyone who participated. I will catch up with you guys on the next one. Take care.